welcome back to Brian's Investments. I got my buddy Walt here again, and we're going to give you some crypto news updates on what's going on with the market, because there's a lot of panic selling, a lot of fears, and just so we can tell you actual true facts. Before we begin, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Let's get started. So what we got going on today, Walt?
It's all going to zero, Brian. It's all going to zero. Bitcoin is over. It's not going to exist anymore. That's the narrative, right? That's if you're on social media, you may actually be hearing that. Obviously, this week we saw a massive correction, and so part of that conversation was, well, who's manipulating the market? It must be fabricated. Part of that conversation is, oh my goodness, it's a bear market. It's all going to zero. Crypto is going to stop existing. The reality is it's somewhere in between all of that.
It's the whales out in the Middle East, you know, they're dumping it all.
Always the whales. So one of the interesting pieces of conversation that I'm seeing is actually a discussion about market manipulation. Now, traditionally, I would say there's not a ton of market manipulation in crypto. However, we definitely have seen, if you go back even a month ago, we've seen a lot of institutional buy-in, right? Coinbase went public. Other large brokerages are probably going to come public. There's talks about ETFs and index funds tethered to crypto. See how I plugged Tether right there, tethered to crypto? Yeah. And so with all of that institutional buy-in, you could argue that there's more money at play that actually does have the ability to manipulate the market. For example, if you look at the stock market, it's pretty well known that large institutional investors, large hedge fund managers can manipulate a stock. It's well proven. You look at Wyckoff distribution models and you say that's how it plays out. Right. That market cap in the stock market is tens of trillions of dollars, and there's enough movement to manipulate that market. Now you look at something like Bitcoin, that's just several hundred billion, not trillions, several hundred billion, and the whole crypto market as a whole is about $1 trillion. That's a much smaller market cap, so it is theoretically much easier to manipulate with some large money movers. And I think we did see a little bit of that recently, so that those institutions can start buying in long term at a value discount.
Yeah. Now, what's your opinion on Elon Musk and that one tweet that everyone said that he manipulated the whole market from one tweet?
So markets are always emotional, right? I've talked about that before. Stock markets, crypto markets. Markets are emotional. They're driven by human, action and reaction. And so when you have something like the richest man in the world tweeting pros or cons, absolutely that's going to elicit an emotional reaction. So when you have somebody like the richest man in the world tweeting either pros or cons about a cryptocurrency, it will logically elicit an emotional response. You could argue that there's a diminishing return to that, right? The first couple tweets are going to have a larger magnitude of response. The more it happens, the less impact it's likely to have. Yes, I think that was part of the market manipulation. So what we learned actually, so Doge is really the big project that he tweets about. And just recently we discovered that he's actually been working with the Doge development team for years. And so you look back on that now in hindsight and you say, why were you putting out all of these tweets recently? You were in this project when it was a fraction of a penny, and now you've run the price up to almost $1. Obviously, there's a financial incentive for him to see that project do well since he's been working with them for so long. So it's certainly part of that as well.
Yeah. He wants to take down Bitcoin and put it in the Doge.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, but that's his thought anyway. Right. The other piece of that is, while yes, there is some market manipulation potentially happening, or recently potentially happened, the other part of that is just market metrics, right? The market was actually due for a correction. When you look at the overall price movement in the last several months in the crypto space, you cannot argue that we weren't due for a correction. And how do we know that? We go back and we look at historical data. That's all technical analysis is, right? Look at the history to see what we can forecast for the future. If you look at the 2017 bull market, we had half a dozen instances of 30 to 40% corrections as the bull market was running to its peak. And that kept the market healthy. That allowed for consolidation before the next price move. We haven't had that at all in this bull market. We've seen about 2 good corrections in this bull market up until this recent massive correction. And so you take the fact that we were well overdue for a good correction, and you take the fact that that correction was probably pushed a little harder by market manipulation, and you see a 40 to 50% correction.
So a lot of people ask, how do you know it's a dip? How do you know it's a correction? How do you know it's not an actual crash of the market?
Right.
How can you tell the difference?
Yeah. So there's a few things you can look at. I'm a data guy. I love the data, and so I always go back to previous bull markets and compare what we saw then to what we see now.
History repeats itself.
History traditionally repeats itself. So if you look at the 2013 market, you look at the 2017 market, you will see 2 things. One, our 2021 bull market was ahead of schedule on both of those trajectories until this crash. Again, it was well overdue, it was needed. 2, we are nowhere near the peak from where we were on either one of those markets. You could look at the timing of that, right? We're well ahead in actual calendar days of when it should occur. And you can look at percent of returns as measured from the bottom of the bear market, as measured from the previous all-time high. There's all kinds of different ways you measure those moves to determine that we are still well beyond, in front of what we need to be before we're at a peak.
Yeah. And then it seems like each halving and corrections, it's not as severe as it has been in the past. Do you think that it'll get less severe further down the road, or do you think when the price goes up so high that it's going to have an even bigger correction just because there's a lot more?
Yeah. So I look at 2 things that I personally think will probably play out. Again, it's all based on the charts. Going back and looking at 2013, compare that to 2017, compare that to 2021, I see 2 things that might likely play out. One, the bull market cycles might be slowly extending, and so the actual top of the bull market might take longer to get to than they did in previous markets, which again is an indicator we're not close to the end of the bull market. The other one is we do see a very clear diminishing returns market over market. Now that doesn't mean there's not great run-ups still to be had. I still firmly believe that the conservative estimate is Bitcoin will be at 90 to 100,000 before the end of this market. There are people out there that will say 300,000. Kathy Wood, who runs ARK Investing, is still to this day saying 500,000. So there's a lot of people smarter than me that think my numbers are very conservative. Right. We're not anywhere near, right? Even from these prices at 38,000, we're still 3x before we hit a conservative top. And so that's part of it. But I do think cycles are lengthening somewhat. And I do think there is a clear diminishing return, is simply in terms of percentage of ROI, right? When Bitcoin was $1 and it went to $1,000, vice when Bitcoin's $10,000 and it goes to $50,000, we see those diminishing returns. And if you measure, there's multiple ways to measure it, but whether you measure it from the bottom of the bear market, whether you measure it from the previous all-time high, all of the charts indicate that we are seeing those diminishing returns bull market over bull market, which is perfectly logical when you consider just the enormity of the price and the amount of institutional adoption we have now. That takes out some of the volatility as it goes.
So with all the FUD going on in China and India and places like that, they're talking about banning and regulating. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so some news stories recently broke, and the headlines, of course, read dire. They say China is going to ban crypto. India is thinking about banning crypto. Neither one of those are actually facts, so they're not accurate. So China did not recently ban crypto. China banned crypto in 2013. This is nothing new for China. They simply recently reiterated that they have a ban on crypto. That doesn't keep you from mining it. That doesn't keep you from personally owning it. It only keeps financial institutions from making transactions with it, and that's literally it. Part of the big reason that they've reiterated it is not because they're anti-crypto. China is very, very pro-crypto. The reason they've recently reiterated that they don't allow other cryptos is because they just recently launched the yuan, which is China's government-sanctioned, government-backed digital currency. And if you don't allow any other digital currency except your own, the logical conclusion is your own will do better in the country. And so that's really all that news was about, is trying to push China's new digital currency. It's interesting because it's the first ever government-sanctioned, government-ran cryptocurrency. That's kind of the antithesis of cryptocurrency, right? It's not private in any way, because the company that is promoted and sanctioned by the government will manage and track and store all of the user data for the transaction. So it is by no means private. And it's also by no means decentralized, because it's government regulated, and they're holding it within one specific institution that runs the whole thing. So you actually have a very, very centralized, not private at all, government-sanctioned e-currency, which is not what digital currency is really designed for. But that's the push for why China says they're going to ban it.
It's not decentralized. What's the point of crypto?
Exactly right. And so when you talk about India is an interesting story too, because again, the headline was very, dire. India is thinking about banning currency. They're really not. Here's a neat little history lesson on India. In 2018, they tried to ban cryptocurrency in India. The Supreme Court of India overruled that decision and said, no, we will not ban currency. The financial institutions can do what the financial institutions want to do with cryptocurrency. And ever since then, there's been this conversation of, what do we do? Do we ban it? Do we regulate it? How do we work this? And so what they're actually talking about doing right now is regulating the use of crypto inside India. Now, India is the second most populated country in the world. If they regulate crypto, that is a good thing for the use case of crypto in India. That will solidify that it is by no means banned. It is usable. Sure. And when it's the second most populated country in the world, clearly allowed to use it, that's a good thing. Even though the story reads as a bad thing, when you look long term, that's a positive for cryptocurrency. And then we have the US. Just this week, the Treasury Secretary is talking about, maybe we're missing out on this slice of pie. Maybe we need to be taxing cryptocurrency. Yeah. Now, you could argue whether that's good or bad to be taxing the profits off crypto. Now, I'm a big believer that if you earn money, you should pay your taxes, right? That's how the system works. Right. But you can't ban something if you're going to tax it. And so while the initial story of we're going to tax crypto sounds bad, that again solidifies its use case and its adoption in America. If the Treasury is adopting it and agreeing that it's viable to the point of saying, let's rewrite tax code to tax it, it's not going anywhere, and that's a good thing.
Yep. And now something that a lot of people want to know, Safe Moon, Bonfire, Shiba, all these little tiny things are coming out, meme coins, joke coins. People are pouring money in, some of them are getting wrecked, some of them are making a little bit of money, but that's like a top thing right now that tens of thousands of people are investing in. I don't personally touch it. I don't want to touch it. I stay with stable coins. What are your opinions on what's going on with that?
So on my channel, I did a video maybe a couple weeks ago called micro cap projects, and it was talking specifically about the Safe Moons, the Bonfires, the Shiba Inus, the Doge coins even. And so the punchline to that was, it is without a doubt the most risky investment you can make in the crypto space, really in any space, right? So first you have to lay your financial foundation, right? Pay off your debt, have some money in savings, have your traditional investments in place, maybe real estate, maybe mutual funds, whatever you're into. And then you move to crypto because it's more volatile, it's more risky. Don't put all your eggs in that basket. And from there, now you get into these micro cap, tiny projects that really have a much greater chance of failing than they do of succeeding. And I talked a little bit about, like, if you're going to play in that space, a couple things that you want to do, right? You want to get in very early before they're mainstream, because that's really where the price run up happens. Right. And you want to be very careful to take your profits along the way so you don't get left holding the bag. And I even went as far as to mention what I believe at that time, because there's so much changes in the micro cap space. At that time, what I thought were probably the best of the 5 micro caps that I had looked at. I'd look at hundreds. I did some screening on my own. I put some metrics together. and I paired it to about 5 or 10 that I thought were viable at that time. And I in the video, I mentioned what I thought were the top 5. Now that's about as good as breaking news a week later, right? Because there's so much volatility there, so much changes. That should be a very, very small percentage of your investment pie if you're going to put any money into it whatsoever. And it should be absolutely the last thing you put money into after, solid projects that we've talked about on this channel before. Solid use case, mass adoption, the Bitcoins, the Ethereums, the Cardanos, the V-Chains, those types of projects. And even that should come after sound long-term investing like mutual funds, real estate investments, whatever you want to dive into. Because the markets are so cyclical, we all know that there will be a bear market in crypto where most people will want to have an exit strategy to pull their profits off, maybe into stable coins and just let it sit pegged against the dollar. Or maybe they pull their profits off into other investments like real estate and mutual funds until the next bull market starts, and then they get back into the space. Lots of people have different thoughts on that, but those micro projects are the last piece of an investment triangle. It's all the way at the top. It's very, very risky. It's a little bit of your money to hope to make some really silly gains. Most people won't.
So price predictions, we're probably very similar on price predictions, but what you got for Bitcoin?
So right now, as we speak, Bitcoin is at 37,991. 37,991. I think 3 days ago, literally right before this biggest correction, I posted on my social media that I was predicting all-time highs for Bitcoin within the next 2 weeks.
Should be about 63,000.
About 63,000. So that was before the massive correction, 40+%. But I still believe that within probably the next 2 to 4 weeks, we're going to see a parabolic shoot up the price, and I think we'll be back to all-time highs within the next 2 to 4 weeks. Long-term for this bull market cycle, I think $90,000 to $100,000 Bitcoin is still a very conservative number. That's where I would expect it to be. And honestly, that's where I'll start really digging in and seeing if we're about to top. And I'll start pulling, my personal exit strategy will be to pull some profits into stable coins so it stays in the crypto space, but it stays pegged to the dollar, and I don't lose a bunch of money if we do see a massive bear market.
Yeah, on the volatility, I would guess 90 to 125,000.
Yeah.
It could go either way, but I don't see it being any less than 80,000 at a minimal.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree with that. Even, again, I'm a big fan of the history. If you look at the ratio of diminishing returns in previous cycles, and you calculate that ratio based on where we're at now, where we're at a few days ago, what our all-time high was just at, it's very easy to see $80,000 to $90,000 Bitcoin. Very, very easy to see that.
Yep.
What do you think about Ethereum?
So Ethereum sitting at what, about 2,300?
About 2357.
2357. We were getting close to that 5,000 line, which a lot of people were saying that it's going to be the absolute top. I feel like 8,000 to 10,000 will be the top of this bull cycle. I think a 5,000 will be an absolute minimal standpoint, minimum. A lot of people are saying, 12,000, 27,000 high numbers. Mm-hmm. But with the volatility and what's going on right now, I'm kind of holding to that 8 to 10 area.
I'm not too far off of that. So I've been saying for a while, and this correction doesn't change my mind at all about long-term pricing. I've been saying that by the end of this bull market cycle, Ethereum will probably be 10,000 conservatively. I've seen a lot of ranges. I've seen 12, I've seen 25, I've seen $100,000 Ethereum. I just don't see that. The market cap can't support that this cycle. No. But certainly I think that $10,000 mark, give or take, is probably about right. And again, I mean, that's a 5x almost on your money. $10,000 to $12,000 Ethereum from where it's at right now, that's a 500% increase on your money. It's still a good time to buy, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What about some of the smaller projects like Cardano or V-Chain?
Yeah, so Cardano is sitting at about 158?
About 158.
And it was recently in the 230, 260 range. Yeah. I can see, so my price prediction is $10 this cycle. A lot of people tell me I'm absolutely crazy, but the way that it's been going up, and it's getting a lot more support now. This year it's had more support than ever, I feel like. I feel like, you know, a 5 to 6 will be a minimum, but I'm predicting 10.
So it's funny. So that's the exact same dollar amount that I've been predicting on mine as well. Is I think $10 is a conservative number for Cardano. The thing about Cardano that people don't really realize is they're kind of quietly behind the scenes just crushing it with the development, the partnerships they're rolling out. They just signed an agreement with Ethiopia for a student ID ran on blockchain. That's phenomenal. They're not out there, you know, you don't see them in the mainstream, right? Like Bitcoin and Ethereum, you hear them spoken a lot more. Cardano's a sleeper right now. They are just out there going to work.
Yeah, sleeping giant.
And when that work is realized, it's going to be phenomenal long term for Cardano. So I agree with you. I think by the end of this bull market cycle, we're at $10 easily.
Yeah, because I think some of these crypto projects, they have an excellent development team. They don't care about publicity and getting out in the spotlight. They're just taking their time to build an awesome.
Their focus is to change the landscape in finance through blockchain. And they don't care about the immediate. They're not looking for buzz. They're not looking for hype. They are going to work to change the landscape in finance. And Cardano is leading the way, in my opinion, in that regard.
Yeah, stay away from the hype cryptos.
Yeah. So speaking of hype, we should probably just go ahead and say, since we threw out price predictions, I don't know about you, I'm not a licensed financial advisor, so nothing that I've said today is financial advice. That's just Walt Key's opinion based on Walt Key's investigation of the data.
Yeah, this is our opinion. This is what we're doing. We're not encouraging you to do what we do or to invest in anything. So again, we are not financial advisors.
Yeah, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express not too long ago.
Oh yeah.
So there's that.
Nice.
I figured that'd be a nice little capstone.
Yeah. And then Harmony. Or VeChain.
Yeah, so Harmony and VeChain are much smaller projects. They're both trading right around a dime right now. Now, I will tell you, while she is also not a licensed financial advisor, my almost 18-year-old daughter wanted to invest in some cryptos through me. And I said, here's a bunch of great projects. You do the research for yourself. You tell me which one you think is the best, and we'll put some money in a few. And look, Harmony is my daughter's favorite project. She did her own research, she ran the white paper, she read the background, and she determined that that is the best project in crypto right now.
It's another sleeping giant.
And I tend to agree.
Explode.
Yeah, I personally have money in Harmony and VeChain and Cardano. I think there's never enough. It's time to buy more. The proud dad moment. So when this correction happened, my daughter came to me completely unsolicited, and she said, "Dad, it looks like it's time to buy the dip." And so she bought more, and that's the way that you do this. Even a young lady with a head on her shoulders can understand now's a great time to buy.
Yep.
The price point is a little bit more subjective because it's a dime roughly right now, and it's hard to say definitively where does this get to in this bull market. I don't have a solid price prediction because I just think
it's a long-term hold.
Any number that I give would probably likely wind up being conservative at the end of the day, and I would have missed it by being short. I really think that it's just going to do wonderful things, and VeChain as well. I think those two projects stand to make a lot of gains very short term.
Yeah, because I'm thinking 50 cents is definitely possible with this bull run. Fingers crossed for $1.
Yep.
But I really think that the next bull cycle is going to be the one where it really shines and is going to have its day.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so that's all the crypto news that we have for you today. I want to thank Walt again for coming and helping me on this video. And make sure you check out his YouTube channel as well. And you want to tell them what it's all about? Yeah, so I run a small fledgling YouTube channel called Never FOMO, and I talk about personal finance across all of the different asset classes. So whether you're investing in crypto, real estate, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, I try to break down how to get a proper personal finance foundation, and then I talk about the different investments and how that plays into it. So I'll drop the link to my channel in the comments of this video so anyone can go take a look at that. Yeah, make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.